Welcome everyone. My name is Suzanne Pichetti Johnson and I'm the program manager for Avenues to Wellness. We are a program of the Frank R. Howard Foundation and this is our speaker series. And I am truly proud to introduce our two guests today, Claudia Wenning and Autumn Whitaker. Claudia is a holistic health consultant who's been practicing for many years. She specializes in functional medicine and naturopathy. Autumn Whitaker is a clinical herbalist who specializes in complementary cancer treatment and chronic illness. Both of these gals are longtime respected healers in our community and we really appreciate them being here today. Thank you so much. They're going to have a conversation about Autumn's experience with COVID-19.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you very much for making this possible and having provided this incredible service for the community now for many years. So here we are.
Yes, and thank you for inviting us to
welcome.
Get the opportunity to share our information and our opinion, our perspective. Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So today is a very special edition of this series, because Autumn kindly has said she would share with us how it was for her to go through being infected with the coronavirus. Fortunately, there's only few of us who have gone through it to, tell the tale. And Autumn, thank you for being here and doing this. Mm-hmm. So we both want to share a very important disclaimer before we start. And that is, whatever we talk about today, anything that could sound like a recommendation or a suggestion, we have no intention to provide any suggestions that you should take and run with it. If you have any medical issues, we really want to encourage you to see your medical provider. None of what we say here is meant for you to take this as something to follow up without having consulted your doctor. Is that clear enough?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, here comes the question.
Okay.
So Autumn, first of all, we're glad you made it through, but it wasn't only you, it was your whole family.
Yes, my husband and son.
Okay, so we would love for you to just tell us about the experience, what you have learned from it, and what we can learn from your experience, because this is really the most important thing. How can we prepare ourselves for something we have never experienced before? And now, fortunately, we have someone who went through it, like you, who could help us out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So I want to start with sharing that at the end of this month, it will be 1 year since I had COVID. And at this point in time, I'm feeling very fortunate that, having contracted it, we were part of the first, form of COVID going around and not this newer, stronger variant. So it almost feels like a new time now that we're facing. So it was shortly after Thanksgiving last year, and my family from the beginning was taking this virus and this pandemic very seriously. The previous March, when I had heard about it and that it kind of had broken loose and was now, running free through community, I did a lot of research and reached out to older, respected alternative health practitioners and herbalists and teachers to see what people were doing and formulating. And so I went ahead and prepared months in advance for the chance that my family or loved ones or somebody in the community that I was close to would contract this and need my help. So we were doing all the precautions, including, stocking our home kit with all the things that we might need, and herbally and supportive care-wise. And we were masking and sanitizing and staying home. So we were really shocked
Yeah.
to find out
Yeah.
that we had, contracted it. It was unbelievable, because at that point it felt mostly like, oh, it's a myth, or it's out there, or it's not reaching us
Right.
yet, even though we knew it was starting to move throughout communities. So my husband, he became ill first, and it was such a strange illness that we had about a day of just being stumped. It came on so fast for him that by the afternoon he was laid out on the couch and was curled into himself and close to tears, because he had full body pain. And he said he'd never felt anything like it. And at first he thought he was poisoned. That was what he kept telling me.
Interesting.
Was, I feel like I'm poisoned, like I ingested some chemical I'm not aware of, because he does building and construction and land management, and he kept telling me that, it's just all over, and he was shaking and cold sweats, no major fever right away, and he stayed like that for 2 days on that couch, and that's when I said, I feel like this could be COVID. And it was just a hunch. There was no typical symptoms that we'd, been informed about to kind of follow and gauge from. So I encouraged him to get up off the couch, which was very painful, and get down to a local clinic and get tested. And that was right when the rapid test was being used. So, prior to that, it was the send away test. He left. He insisted on driving himself and keeping us home. Him and my 8-year-old son was home with me. By the time he got his results and called me, my son and I were coming down with symptoms. So it just was happening so fast, and so I answered the phone, and he said, the rapid test is positive. They're not even going to send it out. It's so clear. And we were already infected, obviously.
Yes.
So we have an organic farm. We have dairy goats. We take farm interns. So immediately I told everyone to leave the farm and go to their housing where they stay. And we shut down everything right away. And I started on all the things I had prepared, all the protocols. I hit it hard. I was not passive in my approach. And I came at it with all I had, and even for my son. Some things are strong, for children. So I just gauged, knowing dosing for size and age and weight. But I instinctually felt I didn't want to mess around with this virus. So, and we were taking all our supplements as well, eating really good, going right into all sorts of things, hot baths and steams, and like I was saying, chest tapping, and so it hit us all. We had wonderful friends dropping groceries and supplies at our gate. For my husband and son, they were down for about 2 weeks, which is typical. I think it was around 8 days where my son started to feel better, and my husband as well, but they were still feeling very funky for 2 weeks with continuing symptoms, for about a month that came and went. I, unfortunately, was hit very hard, and the duration of intense illness was 2 months for me, and I ended up seeing a pulmonologist and getting several chest x-rays, having side effects and symptoms, in my heart, my lungs, having neurological symptoms that were so strange, feeling like I was falling all the time, vertigo, things like that. But mostly having so much difficulty breathing.
Yes, the breathing.
Even without the harsh cough. I didn't even have a major cough. I just had such extensive inflammation in my lung tissue. It really pushed becoming emergent for me and needing to go to the urgent care,
Yes.
which I almost did several times, and had an oximeter at home so that I could keep track, which was very helpful. And I ended up finding things that I was able to utilize to reduce that inflammation enough to where I felt like I had a handle on it, but came very close to not. Very, very close.
So it was really tough, wasn't
It was really tough and really scary. It was really scary, and it wasn't an illness I had experienced before. So many people I speak with want to equate it to a cold or a flu.
It's not
They-
that, isn't it?
It's not. And there is this desperation to call it that, or to downplay it to this is a really bad flu.
It's
Or it's
different.
just like a cold. And I really can't, push the point enough that it's not. The way it feels in the body, the way it moves through the body, the fact that we can't gauge who's going to respond in what way.
Right.
This is not a really bad cold. It's just not.
Yeah. So, were there like significant differences in the symptomatic with like you and your husband, the grown-ups, and your son? Was there?
So I had hoped that there would be, because that's what, a lot of the information was saying at that
Right.
point was it's not hitting kids hard. Kids are doing really well. Unfortunately, my son was hit hard with it, and the symptoms were very similar to ours. And the worst symptom for him, of course, he had the highest fever.
Oh, okay.
And so that was really scary. I don't know if this was a direct result of having a high fever, but as a child they get high fevers. So we've dealt with that before. And the symptoms that were the strongest for him seemed to go beyond a normal fever response. What it was that he had these feelings of, like I was saying, I had neurological symptoms of falling constantly to where he couldn't sleep.
He couldn't see.
He was so sleep deprived because I had to hold him upright for hours sometimes, because I'd be holding him and he would start to drift off and he would wake up screaming and tell me I'm falling, tell me that it felt like something was pushing his head down. Mom, get it off my head. And this went on for I think about 4 nights. And we were able to get the fever down to what felt safe for his age, but the symptoms were still there. And he had the cough, he had the sore throat, he had some digestive upset. But yeah, I was really shocked and upset to find it wasn't easy
It
for
wasn't
him.
easy for him. Right.
Yeah.
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 And so this feeling of having no balance, like a vertigo kind of experience, you had it and your son had it and your husband too?
We did.
Wow.
We did. And it was the symptom that lasted the longest. Even after I got through, the challenge with my lungs, even after I got through that, 2 months later, I would have these moments where I was walking around and I would feel like the earth dropped out of me, out of nowhere, and I would need to sit, and I would be just overtaken by exhaustion and vertigo, and I would feel like if I don't close my eyes right now, I might lose consciousness. And my husband said he was having the same thing, and so that went on for a couple of months as well.
Is it resolved at this point, do you think?
I do, but a year later I do. But I can say honestly that for months afterwards, I felt exhausted.
Yeah.
I felt strange symptoms and a hard time getting up in the morning at times.
Yes.
Yeah, so it definitely stressed the body enough to to make it almost a chronic thing.
So, what, in your estimation now, was the most helpful self-care you did for you and your family in retrospect?
Yeah, we did so many things, as I said, you know, we really came at it from every angle. And that's how I approach things, you know, I really do. And so we came at it from a spiritual level, a physical level, you know. And I've shared before that we made sure that we, like I shared with you earlier, we made sure that we kept a positive outlook and that we laughed a lot together. And even though we were so fatigued, that we, you know, watched silly movies and read silly books and colored and did puzzles and kept our spirits up. And I think from the beginning we maintained the mindset that we were going to get through it.
Right.
And come out the other side healthy and whole. And so we really held on to that. And then I can't stress enough the importance of supportive care, you know, things that we did, even if it was just hot teas to keep the lungs moist and to keep, you know, feeling like, whew, we're moving things, and hot baths. And I, at one point, hung off my bed, and my husband just, you know, played the drums on my back to help move things in my lungs.
Yeah.
So all of these little supportive measures together, I think, made a huge difference.
So the hot tea and the hot bath, did you do any hot inhalations as well?
Yeah, I did many, many steams, like for all of us, and several times a day. We just did the good old, you know, stock pot with the towel over your head, and put essential oils or herbs in there that you know felt would open and loosen. And we also kept humidifiers going at night and added essential oils into that just to keep the air moist. I know one of the challenges with this illness is that the lungs become hard.
Yeah.
You know, hard and dry and unproductive. And so we were taking so many precautions to make sure that didn't happen. Yeah.
Wow. So we're looking at pretty much 2 months till you all felt like we got through it. It's all only uphill from now. Yeah, that quite took a toll on you. And that actually was before there were any vaccinations available.
Yeah.
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 So there was no other remedy than go through it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And in that 2 months' time, I mean, I was put on several inhalers.
Yeah.
You know, emergency albuterol inhaler as well as steroid inhalers to
Yes.
decrease the inflammation. I was given oral steroids. You know, I didn't feel I had to utilize all of it all the time, but I was given it in case and had it on hand because, you know, the inflammation was an ongoing daily struggle.
So really, you want to reach out to whatever options are available out there, right? To just make sure you have more than one option depending on your symptoms.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And do you think food was an important part?
I do. I do.
Okay.
I'm big on nutrition, and definitely when your system is depleted, you know, I feel like food is one of the easiest ways that we can take in our medicine.
Right.
And, you know, the most available, the absorption is right there. It's going right through. So I did, and, you know, I pumped the old wise favorites like garlic and cayenne and ginger and lemon and honey and all the things your grandma gives you when you're sick. You know, we turn to those simple things as well.
Yeah.
And cooked stews and things that we loaded with greens and root veggies. So, yeah, that came into play a lot.
So would it be prudent to say that this was a systemic state of inflammation? Somehow?
Yeah, you know, it feels that way.
It feels that way, right?
Because the body, you know what was so interesting, and that's a really good point, is that, and my husband and I just were fascinated by this, element, although it was really not pleasurable to go through, but all the places in the body where we had old pain and trauma
Ha.
blew up
Interesting.
and became so incredibly painful. You know, an old injury here, an old healed break here
Really? Wow. That's
is where
fascinating.
that was the pain that would keep you up the most at night.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I absolutely think it was systemic, you know, inflammatory response going on.
So these were things that, I mean, like you broke a bone many years ago and you totally forget about it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you wake up in the middle of the night and that particular area is painful.
Oh yeah, and on fire.
Yeah.
So that was pretty incredible. That, you know, there's so much we don't understand about this virus, and things like that just really hit it home.
Yeah.
You know,
Very
that this is
interesting.
this is a new one.
Yeah. Because whenever, whatever virus enters a body, this body has a whole medical history, right? And we all have our individual medical history. So then there's a variation how this virus then actually expresses itself and what it creates within that particular body. So it's
Yeah.
different for everyone.
Yeah.
So it's not like everybody's knees hurt or they don't hurt. You never
Yeah.
know, right? It could
Yeah.
be anything. Also, always connecting it back to what your body has been through already.
Right. That also really hits home the point that we don't know who's going to respond negatively. Like, we know that there's certain illnesses and there's certain aspects that make, you know, a negative response more likely, but truthfully, we're seeing healthy people have these huge inflammatory responses to it, and really, we have no way of knowing that.
Yeah. Okay, so, wow, yeah. Before I say anything about that, yeah, that's really intriguing. Because I've been thinking about this a lot, and not just for any pathogen that enters the body, but also when we try to prepare the body for pathogenic influences, like with vaccination. Symptoms can occur which actually don't have so much to do with what comes in, but what the terrain is already and has been for, you know, our lifespan. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. So that's a lot of food for thought. So now I actually would like to bring up another subject, which is probably something you can tell us a lot about. It's breath. Not just in regard to what you went through with COVID, but in general. How do you see breath as a supportive agent in coming back to homeostasis?
Yeah, that's a wonderful topic, and you know, both of us being passionate about breath and breath work. I feel like breath is one of those things that should take up a huge part of our lives. We should give more focus to finding time to utilize our breath and really exercise or put the lungs to work and allow ourselves to take in as much oxygen as possible and feed the cells. But I think for me, particularly during COVID and then after, the breath was the thing that did everything from calming the nerves when I felt unsure and afraid, and then also helping me feel like I was getting my lungs in the best condition they could be in, you know, by expanding and really moving the breath through my rib cage and letting it do its magic, so to speak. Yeah. And then for so long after, as I felt this weight and compression on my chest all the time because my lungs were so inflamed, breathing to the fullest extent was the only thing that moved that through. You know, I could take as many things as I wanted to get that inflammation down, and they would help, but in the end it was breathing that was expanding my lungs and stretching them back out and reminding them what their natural state was.
And that could have been literally painful, right?
It was,
It was.
yeah.
But you did it nevertheless because you could
Oh,
tell
yeah.
it made a difference.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's important, yes.
Oh, yeah. And which was interesting too is really expanding the lungs brought moisture back.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and we know that health states, you know, tight is dry.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
And so getting them working again was encouraging them to get
Yeah.
back to their healthy normal state. And yeah, the breath was so crucial to our whole journey.
So breath is something that's always with us.
Mhm.
It's kind of, you can't buy it. You can't really bottle it. I mean, it's like this unusual, amazing essence of life that's always with us,
Mhm.
right? So what would you say if somebody would ask you, okay, all right, well, breath, well, what am I supposed to do with this breath to feel better?
Mhm.
What would you say?
Yeah. Utilize it and find
Okay.
out, you know,
Okay.
what to do with it to feel better. In my work, when I do breath work as therapy with people, I try to get across how breath affects every part of the body, like I said a moment ago, how it enhances, you know, our emotions and our awareness of our emotions and helps us process the emotions as they come up. So I feel like breath is essential. It's part of life, but it's always taken for granted. So it's
Yeah.
never actually utilized as a tool for feeling better physically or emotionally. So I think that's really what I want to get across to people is that message is to utilize it, sit with it, whether it's meditative breath or it's active breathing through exercise or dance or movement. It's really just utilizing the breath as a tool for well-being.
Yeah. So it would behoove us all to get to know breath in a totally new and different and very inquisitive way, because I really agree with you. There's so much hidden goodness
Yeah.
that is accessible once we really create a deep relationship with breath itself, rather than just, yeah, it's coming and going and yeah, it's a good thing.
Right.
So there's way, way, way more to it, right?
Yeah.
But breath is just a very quiet friend of ours. It just comes quietly and it leaves quietly. So it's not making a stand saying, you got to pay attention now and
Yeah.
deal with me. It's almost like it serves us without its own purpose, but then it doesn't really show initially how much breath really, really gives us life itself.
Yeah. And it's such a subconscious act
Yeah.
that, you know, we do it without thinking, and then we get into the pattern or the habit of being shallow breathers.
Yeah.
And we all know that when we feel overburdened, just that one moment of like, and immediately, you know, endorphins are released and we feel soothed and calm,
Yes.
and our state is altered
Yeah.
from just one good breath.
Yeah. So I used to say something, and I'm saying this only now, so with all caution, I can wrap this in, but there's one thing that is one of the hardest things to do is actually to stop breathing. Like, some people train it, they can hold their breath for 10 seconds, 20 seconds. I think the record is like several minutes.
Yeah, it's like 8 minutes or something.
8 now. Okay, wow. So,
I think.
but really what that means is innately our body is meant to invite breath in rather than reject it. And I think it's one of the hardest things to do to not breathe. So that just shows me that we can't even function without breath itself. And then even if we hold the breath and then we let that tension go and invite another breath in or exhale, it's like it's a true catalyst of a total shift of not only how we feel physiologically, but whatever we were thinking before, it's gone. because there, in this moment, there's nothing that is more important than the very next breath. So I thought I'd say that.
Can I ask you how you're using breath in your practice and in your life?
Yes. Well, breath is probably one of the first things you become aware of when you wake up in the morning. And it's like this exquisite, one of a kind, and still replicable event every morning that you're becoming aware of being conscious in your body, and you go, another day. Ideally, you know, you could say, another day. But ideally, it's a new beginning.
Yeah.
And truly, like what we say about time, we could say about breath, because it's like pearls that like come in our life and leave. The breath I just took is not the breath I will be taking now. It's a new breath. So then it's not every morning, it's every day, it's every moment that with every breath I take, I am creating a new awareness of me being in this physical body. And the breath is, I would say, a catalyst to being aware of being in this place, in this body, in this environment. And it is something we're so used to that when then our physical condition becomes so depleted that breathing becomes difficult, then all of a sudden we really don't know what to do, right? So what if we, before we get to that state, and hopefully never, why don't we really honor breath as this most magnificent ally? And you can look in other cultures. I mean, there's a lot of lore and ritual and incredible spiritual depth about what the breath brings to the physical body. And that is not only for humans, but for all living beings on this planet.
Yeah.
So I think breath is the underrated essence of life itself. In, you know, in this society we dwell, it is most often taken for granted.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, when an infectious pathogen basically circles the globe without any hindrance and nobody knows what to do about it, if nothing else, it could be a reminder what helps us to stay alive, what helps us to feel alive and bring life energy into our body. Wouldn't that be just an interesting conversation to have, facing peril from a relatively unknown pathogenic entity that is not even visible, really, right? So what if we're all really at a point in evolution itself where we kind of are meant to go back to basics. What is life? How do we sustain life? And what are we doing to interfere with life and the quality of life itself? That could be quality of air, quality of environment, and certainly what are we doing with our bodies so that they actually cannot even utilize what the breath brings in terms of oxygen. What are we doing with our bodies that they are then a prone field for inflammation when something goes wrong? So and then I get going and you can hardly stop me, because what are we doing to ourselves that we are now so susceptible to one invisible agent of imbalance, if you will, that it can derail us, not just physically as the individual, and for some to the extent of finite peril, which is very, very difficult to process. But in general, what are we doing with it mentally and emotionally? What are we doing with our life when there's this unknown quantity of an invisible entity? So I think these are such fundamental questions. It's like our wake-up period to find out, what are we doing to honor life itself within every cell in our body as well as the planet as a whole? Like, where can we make changes? And I kind of see it all connected. Like, we are an entity of a cellular configuration, which you call the human body. Nevertheless, your human body is closely intertwined with all these other cellular configurations, which we call our reality, if you will, right? So, I don't know if I answered your question, but
You did.
but yeah, this is a scary time, but also a time of an never before level of opportunity to become inquisitive.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to say about that.
And to change course. Yeah, you did answer my question. It's a very big question and a really important question that leads to many more, you know. But I think many people felt this deep need to change the course of humanity, of, you know, society, personal choice,
Yes.
life path, you know, and almost like taking a giant breath and saying, oh, all of this isn't working. We're going to do it differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it is up to us and the generations that come in the future that this never before occurrence of almost 2 years now, where the whole world had more questions than answers, literally, and that solutions were needed like yesterday, and a lot of things were implemented. However, eventually someone in the future will have to ask questions now. Is there a better, more constructive or more cohesive way of doing things? And have we really looked at all the parts of the equation, not just at numbers, but also what certain things or certain constructs of social behavior do to people? And that's a total other topic I actually wanted to just mention in passing. There was something interesting happening last year when the concept of social distancing became implemented around the world, literally.
Yeah.
Which the concept itself, I think, was an immediate answer to the understanding that was had then how viral infections get transmitted. Now, it was called social distancing. I don't know who coined it, but in essence, what it meant or means is physical distancing, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, to the degree of 6 feet. And that, I think, has influenced the fabric of life in ways we haven't really understood yet. I may not have believed that so much earlier in my life, but I come to the conclusion based on my experiences that we're really here on this planet to figure this out together. And not apart from each other, and certainly not against each other. And that human interaction is the nutrients that feed the web, if you will, is the nutrient, is this pure golden connection. And there are people out there who haven't been able to connect physically for over a year because of their living situation, maybe their health situation, or other social instances, or whatever may be the case. And that, in my eyes, is not an ideal long-term solution. And long-term, it's been already quite a while.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying just throw it all overboard, but what if we at least could acknowledge it and say, the lack of physical contact for some people is really detrimental to their mental and emotional health.
Which leads to, it affects their physical health.
Exactly. So let's just at least say this is a possibility. Now, what could we do about this? Rather than say, we have to wait till this whole coronavirus thing is over, because we also hear more and more, wish as much as you may, we don't know when it's going to be over or if this virus is ever going to be extinct. So what are we going to do in the meantime, which is who knows how long. So what can we put into place for people who feel literally disconnected, literally, because of the physical disassociation, and that also brings in the aspect of them disassociating from their own body, and that is truly unhealthy. So I don't have the answers, but it is something I'm concerned about, and how we can build bridges. Let's call it energetic bridges. Like we're building a bridge here. It's a 6-foot invisible bridge. It's invisible, right? And actually, why we're here, because we want to extend this bridge to everybody who's watching. It is a connection. It's not the equivalent of a caring and a caring hug without expectations. But let's just nurture all the connections we still can have with each other. And then, of course, then we can even use technology to our benefit. And that's what we're doing here today. Thank you, Suzanne, right? So we can reach out through the ether, and it's not the equivalent, but the energetic exchange can happen to a degree. So these were just thoughts I have been, entertaining over the last months, because the amount of grief we all collectively have tapped into is palpable. And the loss is loss of loved ones, loss of opportunities, loss of businesses, loss of social networking, of gathering in groups, choirs. What a huge loss that there was no singing in groups for so long, which is, I think, one of the most beautiful things people can do together. So we all are kind of united in different levels of experience of grief. Maybe we can just help each other to acknowledge and then find solutions to transform that. If nothing else, we're all in this together, smiling or crying, whatever it takes. So therefore, if nothing else, we're trying to do our part to reach out. Thank you, Suzanne. And we all have to learn together how to move forward, I think, because so many concepts we had in the past, we do 1, 2, 3, and then boom, 4 will happen. Like all these solutions we believed in, a lot of them, they don't work anymore. A lot of things we also felt entitled to, they have literally disappeared. So how do we process all this? I think communication, conversation, however it is, over the fence, across the table, on the phone, whatever it is, the social distancing may have created a tremendous physical distance, but still we can be connected in other ways. And I think we have to figure this out together, to be really creative about it.
Well, we know now, without a doubt, that how much our emotional health impacts our immune system.
Yes.
And our physical wherewithal. And I think that we've been in this pandemic so long, like you're saying, that many people have shut down. have lost hope and feel very alone or are very alone. I know I have a very close group of girlfriends, and we gather, at least twice a month, and most of us are mothers, so it's also a support group for mothering times and whatnot, and we all felt very lost and sad and alone the first couple months, and we kept our distance, and we did that, and something was missing for all of us. And we, at one point, I broached the idea to meet, because we live rurally, most of us, to meet on our country roads and each walk on one side of the road so that we could take these walks together.
Yeah.
And so we would walk, a good 6 to 10 feet away. But it's a rural road, so there's no noise, there's no, and we felt we could take our masks off at that distance outside, and we would, finish our walk by each sitting on our car with our own thermos of tea, like we were having tea. And those little things, a much smaller experience than we were used to engaging in together.
Right.
But, oh my God, they were so vital to our emotional health at that time. I mean, you sit 10 feet apart from somebody and still feel loved and heard and supported and still have the emotional release you need or, experience the joy you're missing. So, little things like that, and really pushing against the pressure to shut down, to shut down our breath, to shut down all of our lifestyle modes we're used to existing in. Depression is a real thing in regular day life, and so going through a pandemic for this long, I hear from so many people how depressed they are, and I think tiny steps, breathe, get out and move, connect in whatever way you feel safe, keep these threads alive.
So there you have it. And really, walking by itself will change your breathing pattern.
Oh yeah.
And it's all in your hands. You can walk fast, you can walk slowly, and your breathing pattern will adjust accordingly, and you can just observe that. So, we're not supposed to give any recommendations, right?
Yeah.
But
Walking's
run it by your medical provider.
Common knowledge.
Run it by your medical provider. What about walking? And breathing deeply while you do it. And have a friend or two just along the country road.
Right.
So I think we should just walk each other through life from here on.
I love it. I love it.